The shooting of 16-year-old Ralph Yarl sparking national outrage. The homeowner now facing 2 felony counts for the shooting. But could this case also be considered a hate crime as well? We're going to dig into that. I'm grateful to be joined now by civil rights attorney Lee Merritt. He's one of the lawyers for the Yarl family. We just heard from in Maggie's story. So, Lee, first, I do want to ask you, how is Ralph doing tonight?
Ralph just got off the phone with the President of the United States tonight. And so he has had a whirlwind of a week. Thursday, he was confronted with deadly force and shot in his head. And he recovered, was released from the hospital on Saturday in stable condition. He is relieved by the charges. He's relieved by the outpouring of support. And like I said, he had a chance to speak with the White House and the President of the United States and get some direct encouragement.
Lee, can you tell us anything about the conversation, how it went, and why the president wanted to speak to him?
Yes. Well, what happened to Ralph is a miracle. He was shot at point-blank range with a handgun. I don't know what kind at the moment. And a bullet entered his brain. His family is extremely relieved that he's here. The entire country is relieved. And the president wanted to communicate that. He said that, you know, your story is an encouragement to the country. We all are waiting to see justice in your case. He talked to Ralph about his clarinet. The president said his father played the clarinet as well. Ralph plays the bass clarinet. He invited him to the White House, and they talked about his future.
And Lee, has he understood yet, has Ralph understood the new charges, and has he been made aware that the homeowner is going to be charged?
Well, Ralph was actually still sort of on cloud 9 about speaking with the president when the charges were announced. I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it directly, and so we'll have to update on that later.
Lee, did you know that these charges were coming down? Were you in touch with the prosecutors, or was this news to you?
This was news to us and to the rest of the family. The prosecutor's office has not been able to connect with my office, although we have been reaching out. We are relieved that criminal charges are going forward, but no, this is not something we expected.
Lee, from all the information we have, and to be fair, most of it has come from Ralph's side of the story and Ralph's family. Is there anything at all, anywhere in this case, where this 85-year-old man could have felt threatened at all? Or was Ralph simply ringing a doorbell?
I think that this man is going to claim to be threatened by something that law enforcement officers often use as the threat they're confronted with. And it's the fear of blackness itself. He opened his door and he saw a black person. And he should have seen a black child, and he should have known that someone was just ringing his doorbell. It shouldn't have been enough to justify a deadly response. But we have seen over and over and over again in American jurisprudence where that argument is used, that the fear of blackness itself is justification for the use of force.
Lee, fill in some sort of holes for us, because, I mean, this is just, it's so incredible. He's shot in the head. Ralph is able still to run away, and then he collapses at another home?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, the story is just incredible. From him able to get up from being shot in the head. Once he fell to the ground initially, Ralph says that he was shot a second time. Obviously, there's a second bullet wound. He realized that he's still taking on shots from the suspect. And so he gets up and he flees and he runs to the next home and he begs for help. He doesn't get any help from the neighbor or the following neighbor. The third neighbor begins to actually issue him commands like, put your hands up, lay face down on the ground. Ralph complies and he gets medical care.
So after being shot, he actually had to struggle to even get help after that?
And again, I feel like there may have been some of that same racial element that the prosecutor referenced in that community where he was still being treated as a suspect as this child was bleeding from his head and begging for help.
What have you told him? You've done so many of these cases. When you talk to him or you talk to his family, I'm sure his family is not surprised that something like this happened in America, but we're still talking about a 16-year-old child here, right? And someone who was on the right track from all accounts that we've heard so far. What have you told him personally about why this happened to him?
I have told him that God is trying to tell the nation something through this case. Ben Crump and I and Sean King and I, when the family asked us to help out on this case, we said this was the first time that we've all been called together to work on a case that involves someone who survived the initial encounter with police. or with misuse of force. And so that is such huge relief that he is alive to tell his side of the story, to live out his future. And hopefully it gets the nation's attention around gun violence and justice, accountability in our criminal justice system.
The homeowner in this case has been described as 85-year-old Andrew D. Lester. At this hour right now, we understand he's not in custody. That may change even by the end of this broadcast. These things can happen pretty quickly. If you could send a message to Lester tonight, what would you tell him?
On behalf of the family, on behalf of this community, we need him to be prepared to face full accountability for his actions. It is not enough to fear blackness and use that fear to justify the use of deadly force. It is a pattern of abuse that we've seen throughout the country, and it has to begin to stop now. The nation has now stood up. The community of Missouri has stood up and demanded accountability. We're on the first step to justice. He can make it easier by coming clean with his actions and accepting responsibility, but regardless, we're hoping that this leads to long-term permanent change.
And then, Lee, before I let you go, Ralph was obviously discharged from the hospital after suffering a head wound. Is he okay? And was it the right call to get him out of the hospital?
So Ralph was discharged by his doctors after he was stable. But the injuries that he suffered, he'll suffer with for the rest of his life. These are serious, permanent injuries. And so his mother being a nurse, his auntie being a physical therapist, his family being in the medical health field, they have what they need to take care of him at home. But this is going to be a long road to recovery for young Ralph.
Okay, Lee Merritt, we appreciate your time. We thank you for that. And again, the President of the United States calling Ralph Yarl tonight and speaking to him on the phone.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.